if you want to be a filmmaker, the best thing you can bring to, the world is your own story. And there's something that's very personal to you and something that you have your own singular connection to, that if it really is important to you, there are people all over the planet that will relate to it.
Born in Brooklyn in 1969, Darren Aronofsky was artistic from a young age. By the time he was ready to go off to school, he knew he wanted to study art. He attended a small, private art school called Harvard University, and he leveraged his connections there well, shopping a student film called Supermarket Sweep, which won several awards and made him a National Student Academy Award finalist. Aronofsky took his time getting his first feature film, Pi, made, but it was worth the wait. Starring Supermarket Sweep actor Sean Gillette, Pi was made for a relatively austere $60,000, and it raked in $3 million worldwide. Studios weren't quite ready to take a chance on Aronofsky, though, and he encountered a lot of resistance to his next project, 2000's Requiem for a Dream. Based on the Hubert Selby Jr. novel, Aronofsky didn't shy away from shocking visuals, and Requiem struggled to make back its modest $4.5 million budget. It's since become a cult classic, though. Audiences and critics weren't quite ready for Requiem, but nobody was ready for 2006's The Fountain. Beset by production and budget problems, and by Brad Pitt famously dropping out at the 11th hour, it took 6 years of struggle, begging, and considerable rewrites to get the movie made. The Fountain failed to make back even half of its budget, and Aronofsky was back at square one with Hollywood, all of his gravitas from his early success mortgaged to pursue the kind of movies Aronofsky wanted to make. Refusing to abandon his principles, Aronofsky was turned down by almost anyone with money for his next project, 2008's The Wrestler. If Aronofsky was somewhat unwelcome after the flop that was The Fountain, Mickey Rourke, Aronofsky's first and only choice to play the titular wrestler, was persona non grata in Hollywood. Forced to shoot on a single camera and use real people as unwitting extras to get something made for $6 million, Aronofsky thrived under the adverse conditions, and The Wrestler was a phenomenon, raking in almost 8 times its budget. You'd think Aronofsky would have earned a little latitude with this success, but then you wouldn't know Hollywood. Studios balked at the next prospective project, a dark and gritty van-to-black comedy called Black Swan. Ballet fans don't like horror, and horror fans don't like ballet was the prevailing wisdom in Hollywood at the time, but Aronofsky persevered and got the film made anyway. The film made nearly $330 million, netted Natalie Portman a Best Actress Oscar, and even got Aronofsky nominated for Best Director. Now that Aronofsky had proven he could make $300 million at the box office, he was ready to demand half of that as the budget for his biblical epic, Noah. Noah minted money, and Aronofsky used the time after Noah to focus on a movie he wanted to make, 2017's Mother. Mother was Aronofsky's most disturbing film to date, and his most polarizing, famously being booed at the Venice Film Festival one night and getting a standing ovation the next. Aronofsky has written all but 2 of the films he's made, and his style is to take time off and travel and overplan his next move, so it's safe to say he's likely hard at work writing. When he's ready to release a few details about his next project, critics and film fanatics alike will be clamoring for his next release.
Welcome back to Film Hooligans. I'm your host, Jon Dunning, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Jason Alt.
Hey, thanks for rejoining us, everybody.
This episode has been a long time coming. When I started this show, I could say years now ago, this was always one that I had on the docket. Aronofsky films, quite polarizing, quite a lot of things, and we're going to get into all that, but I'm glad that I am now at a point where I feel comfortable discussing his work and to kind of look back to see if my opinion of him has changed. But before we get into that, we have some special help tonight. Jason, why don't you go first? What are you sipping on tonight?
Well, I busted out the good stuff in honor of Darren Aronofsky. I have a Saugatuck Brewing Company in Michigan does a signature beer called the Neapolitan Milk Stout, which is fantastic. This is the bourbon barrel-aged version of that.
Jeez.
So it's 10.5% by volume, and I've had one sip, and it is fantastic.
That is a special brew. Tonight, I'm staying with Elysian, but I have the Contact Haze, mostly because it just, like, the logo, it's like someone drilling into someone's face which is very Aronofsky-esque. So, or ish, esque, sure.
You cleverly combined ish and esque, like Sarah Palin would have.
That's exactly what I was going for. A Sarah Palin reference. This is a hazy IPA. It's only a 6%er, but I got 2 of them, so hopefully that will also do the trick. So nice.
That's like drinking 12%, right?
Right, exactly.
Trust me, I'm a chemist. That's how it works.
Chaim?
Prost.
That is nice. Nice and buble. All right. The Man from Brooklyn. Let's just kind of dive into it. It wasn't one of those that was kind of touched by inspiration to jump right into film at a young age or anything like that. It was kind of a gradual build as far as like he literally had a stoner friend in college, or a stoner roommate that was a sculptor, and that got him into wanting to draw and wanting to express himself that way. And he went to Harvard.
Can we talk about how crazy it is that he's like, I think I'll be general studies? It's like, you went to Harvard and you don't have a plan? Lots of people take 6 years to graduate, Mom. It's Harvard. It's costing us $45,000 a year. Could you get your shit together?
Right. Exactly.
Not that it cost $45,000 a year in 1990.
Right. Yeah. Black and white photographer. So that was, I guess that he was, testing out his visual prowess at a young age, but nothing, not quite the origin story that you expect from the filmmaker of, Requiem and all these crazy, visually stunning films.
You expect to hear, I was always messing around with my dad's Super 8 camera. Like almost every director we profiled is like, well, from a young age, he was making movies. Sam Raimi used to go to the local grocery store bakery when they were closing and throwing pies away so that he could have pies to throw in his friends' faces for movies when he was 12. That's the guy who always wanted to make movies. The fact that Aronofsky fell ass backward into it because he's good at everything kind of pisses me off. Well, I was at Harvard, and I was like, yeah, when you're at Harvard, you can do anything, so I guess I'll be rich and famous.
Yeah, it's just like, he is one of those where it's not quite that Refn syndrome, where, you watch a Nicholas Winding Refn film, and you're just like, oh my gosh, I cannot wait to hear the word of this creator. And then he's like, meh, and I like lights and stuff. And you're like, what the fuck? Aronofsky's this, he's this kind of dude from Brooklyn, and he just makes films because he likes them and stuff. And it's kind of jarring. Like, when you listen to Aronofsky interviews, once you kind of get past all that, you kind of settle in.
But I think he infuses Brooklyn into his movies. It's subtle, but you'll notice that he cast multiple ethnic characters in a lot of his movies. It's like, oh yeah, there are Indian people in New York. You never would have thought that to watch any other movie from New York. But it turns out that it's more than just white people. I don't think it's pandering to cast an ethnic actor who's gotten bigger roles in a very small role. The example I give is the guy who was Samir in Office Space, who was a supporting character, got a lot of screen time. He was just the mailman in Requiem. Mm-hmm. But it's why the fuck wouldn't they have an Indian mailman? There's literally no reason not to do that. He says casting ethnic characters is a very hard thing to do, but it's important, and it's also interesting. So when you watch his movies, it's oh yeah, not everybody's white. Who knew? I think growing up in somewhere like Brooklyn, where you see people of different ethnicities, you're like, oh shit, I have to actually make the filmscape represent, what America's actually like. And I think once you see someone do that well, you realize that nobody else is bothering.
Sure.
It's not pandering, just yeah, why wouldn't a nurse be from the Middle East? Of course, it's fine. And nobody else is bothering, it seems like.
Yeah, and I mean, just jumping into the films themselves, I don't like going in order or anything, but I think that kind of structure tells a story of a person that started in one place and then has completely evolved or conversely to some, maybe devolved in his style. Definitely there's a delineation to a certain point where he was making what everyone knew a Darren Aronofsky film was, and then he got into a certain point, and then he started making a new type. But there were still echoes and reflections of the prior material before. But like he's even said, he's just like, when they were finally transferring over the Requiem into Blu-ray, and they're just like, hey, you need to see this, just give us your final okay. And he was just like, yeah, I remember every single scene, like shooting every scene, but I can't make this movie ever again. Like I would never be able to make a movie like this.
It does look a little immature when you compare it to his later work, but it's way less pretentious too. I think he's gotten very pretentious in his filmmaking, and I don't mean that as much of an insult as a lot of people mean pretentious when they say it. I think pretentious people make people feel small, and that's why they think pretentious is an insult, but like it's not necessarily 100% a dig at him. It's just his filmmaking has gotten more pretentious. Like the fact that he went to bat and struggled so hard to get The Fountain made, and it was such a pretentious piece of shit and everybody hated it.
Yeah.
Didn't chasten him at all. That was the turning point in his career. He could have been like, okay, well, I'm not going to do that again, but he did.
Yeah. He has this tendency to do a one for you, one for me, one for you, one for me type in his, like, he'll make a movie that makes money, and then the studio will be like, where, I mean, he, like you said, stumbled into success. He knocks Pi out of the park. Like, who has the audacity to make a movie like Pi as your first film? Like, it's just insane. And the fact that he executed it, like, again, reoccurring theme on this cast, we always talk about first thing, and I always find myself going, but this is the one that's the crazy, number one. This is the one. I mean, Pi, what do you put up against Pi as a number one or as a first time at bat? Like, it's
Clerks.
Yeah.
Art 8.
I mean,
Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, okay.
Lots of people make good first movies, and that's why, like, they're famous.
Right, but I mean, you have to say, like, Pi it's pretty ballsy for a first, like, just the subject matter and everything, and having to do all the technical stuff, get all that right, put a lot of trust in your friend that you went to college with to helm this whole thing and really tie it all together and execute it. Like, it was great. So, the studios after Pi, they're just like, okay, you have your money. What do you want to do now? And then
that's not true. Nobody wanted to make Requiem for a Dream.
Well, the studios after seeing Pi, they wanted to give him money to do something on a bigger budget, and then that's when he did One for Him, and that was the adaptation.
I don't think he did One for You, One for Me. I think he got a bunch of gravitas, scraping together the money to shoot something Kevin Smith style. Pi was like, well, it cost $60,000, and he was real Spartan,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like a lot of people did him a favor making that movie. He shot on black and white to save money, and then he got more money and made Requiem for a Dream, and then everyone's like, cool, I'm surprised that worked. What do you want to do next? And then he spent 6 years getting The Fountain made, and he went way over budget.
Yeah.
Brad Pitt dropped out.
They shut him down a couple times, right?
Shut him down a couple. He had to rewrite. He had just keep rewriting. He's like, I'm going to get this piece of shit made. And then he made it, and everyone's like, wow, that sucked. He had to beg. Nobody wanted to give him money for The Wrestler. It wasn't a one for him. He made The Wrestler for $6 million because that's all he could get.
Sure.
Like, the woman who bought shaved ham from Mickey Rourke was not an extra. She was just someone going to a deli.
Right.
Yeah. Like, it wasn't a one for him. It was like, if I want to make another movie, I'm going to have to pull it out of my ass like this. Yeah. And nobody wanted to work with Mickey Rourke either. He was a pain in the ass when he wasn't completely punch drunk, and he hadn't really done anything in 2 decades. Yeah. Nobody wanted to work with Mickey Rourke. He threw his career away. And he's like, I liked Angel Heart. Angel Heart's one of my favorite movies. Let's do this. It's got to be Mickey Rourke. And then he did what he needed to do to get the movie made. And everyone's like, oh, okay, that was good. And then nobody wanted to make Black Swan. It's not like, oh, this is a one for you. No studio was like, please make Black Swan. That was all him.
I think Black Swan was the one for him. I think that they let him do it because he made money with The Wrestler when he wasn't supposed to.
He made 8 times the Wrestler's budget back. He made like $50 million on like a $6 million one camera because that's all we can afford sort of a deal.
Yeah.
Like somebody made Black Swan eventually just because The Wrestler did well. But like if he had just made The Fountain, they wouldn't have given him anything.
No.
So it wasn't a... That wasn't even like all of his films were one for him, and like the amount of money he got was based on the success of his previous movie.
Sure.
Like, so someone like Steven Soderbergh does like a one for you, one for me. Like he'll shoot somebody else's script. These are all, with the exception of Requiem for a Dream, which was an adaptation,
and Black Swan.
And Black Swan was an adaptation, and Noah was,
right,
not really original source material.
Sure.
But like with the exception of those two, which were adaptations, all the rest have been his original scripts. No one's like, you're the new Russo brothers, shoot this. As much as he would like to do a superhero project, he was attached to the Wolverine movie for a while.
Mm-hmm. And Batman,
which I think was that the one that became Logan.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know because Logan was fantastic. I wouldn't. If you gave me a time machine, I wouldn't go mess with that.
Yeah, there would have been ass to ass in it, and it would have been weird.
I'd like to see Darren Aronofsky do, because he really likes the medium of comic books. He says it's an underrated medium.
I guess he got handed the keys to Batman, except he wouldn't budge on them not wanting Joaquin Phoenix as Batman. They wanted Freddie Prinze Jr., and he pulled out.
You can't have I'm sorry. This may sound a little ableist, but you can't have a dude with a hair lip be Batman, because everyone's like, you ever notice how Batman and Bruce Wayne both have hair lips? That's weird, right? That's a weird coincidence, right? He's like, oh, I didn't even notice that.
They hire the CGI guy that did Henry Cavill's mustache. Yeah, ectomy. Yeah.
Nothing against hair lips per se, but you can't have a secret identity where your lip is showing. That's all I want to say about hair lips. So I don't know that Joaquin Phoenix would have been the best Batman necessarily.
Maybe not.
Or Joker.
Right. They're like, it's okay. We're gonna put him in blackface. They're like, no.
I'm Black Man.
But okay, just going back to Pi, I think the bones were good, and I think that's what people really kind of latched onto, because some of those, like just the fact that's when he debuted his single camera. He doesn't even know how to work in multiple cameras. He says that it's confusing, and you're not going to get all the details if you're looking at point counterpoint, type dialogue. So he just wants everything. He wants to mount a camera on every single actor, and he wants them to follow around. But it just works in his style of filmmaking. And in Pi, you get these,
because you're an observer. It makes you feel like you're in the room.
Absolutely.
He said in an interview, the camera, it's part of the scene. The camera's like a character. I get that.
Much to most of the actors this made, they're just like, and he's even because he had no idea that was his black hole or his blind spot as far as filmmaking went. And so he went and did an acting class for a couple months just to be able to kind of put himself in his actor's shoes, because, and you could see in Pi, that's his buddy, right? So he had to get this certain kind of comfort for the things that he asked his actors to do. He said that his, feeling safe physically is paramount. That's number one, but making the actors feel safe in an emotional setting is everything, or else, all this stuff falls apart. Because just think of and then some of them take it too far. You have, in Requiem, you have Jared Leto, and he's sitting there actually injecting water into his veins. And he's like, you fucking idiot, you don't have to do that. Even said that he was too meta for that. But there's so many, hard things to ask your people to do in a Darren Aronofsky film. So it's good that he went, and he is self-aware in the fact where he knew what his strengths and weaknesses are, and he kind of diagnosed that early.
I kind of got the impression that he took an acting class to prove to himself that acting was easy. Because he said he took multiple classes about how to direct actors.
Yeah.
Because you can direct a movie, but directing actors, it's like wrangling these sensitive artistic people. They're like, if you use my first name, I literally won't be able to act today. You have to call me Blade. That's my Wesley Snipes voice. You have to call me Blade. So when he was like, I just wanted to take an acting class and then I was going to quit when I learned how to cry, and it took me 3 months.
Yeah.
I was like, this guy doesn't really respect actors. And he's like, Russell Crowe's a genius, the way he twitches his eyelid. Nobody, a normal person couldn't twitch their eyelid and let you know what emotion they're feeling. I'm like,
Sure.
Russell Crowe does not have a second facial expression.
Right.
His eyes are the only thing that move in his head. But like he thinks Russell Crowe's a genius. So like, I don't know, man. He's got some weird opinions, but good on him for learning 3 months worth of acting, which I think is probably all you need, right?
But I think that's the trick, though, because he wants to focus on the things that he wants to focus on the script. He wants to focus on the visuals, the blocking. Like, he's very meticulous with like he wants people to move. Like, everything's planned out. There's very little to no room for improvisation. He has everything just like stickered on the floor. Like Ed Harris is just like, yeah, it was like a rat maze or whatever. Like I knew exactly where to go, exactly where to block, exactly where to turn, kind of like a play. And a lot of his films, especially something like Mother, kind of plays out like a play. It's very meticulous that way. So I think that he just wanted this kind of baseline understanding of just being able to, like I said, like make actors comfortable in the scenes, to then just be like, okay, I don't have to worry about that because I'm gonna just try to hire the best people I can, and now I could worry about the shit that really kind of fuels me.
Well, what's interesting? I think there's a big difference between directors who write the script and directors who don't write the script. Mm-hmm. I think if you wrote the script or adapted something, or like if you're in charge of the screenplay, you're like, no, the words on the page are what I want. But if you didn't, you're just like, we'll see if the writers can punch that up, or like someone does some improv, you're like, that's better than the dialogue on the page.
Right.
I feel like if you wrote it, you're like, no, just say the lines I wrote, idiot. So I'm sure some directors are like, wow, that's better. But some people are kind of like, let's just do what I said. Let's just, somebody worked real hard on that script. He locked himself in a terrible motel for 4 months just so he could concentrate on his work and not be distracted by his weird, elaborate puzzle desk he has in his house. And
sure.
I feel like the writer, if I could get inside the writer's head for a second, I feel like he wanted you to say the line that he wrote. So why don't you just say the line he wrote? And action. It's personality, but I think you can tell a difference in directing styles between people who, are also writers and people who aren't.
See, but then you have PTA where he is like, he likes them delivering the lines from the script, but he's also open to happy accidents, or like a David Lynch is always, he always says he's open to happy accidents, and you never know, like nothing's ever completed until the actors are on set, and then the magic happens. But he is not like that. He's just like, nope, me and Javier Bardem and Jennifer Lawrence are all gonna live together for like 3 months and act like we're this weird married couple / God, so they could do this right, so they could do this correctly, exactly how I wrote it. Like some filmmakers, like even writers like Paul Thomas Anderson, they like things to evolve organically. Definitely not this one, but I think one of the biggest reasons is because in an Aronofsky film, he's adapting from other source material. But some of the source material's so familiar where he's just like, yeah, it's the Bible. Like, what are you going to improvise?
How many of his movies are just the Bible?
Yeah. I know.
Oh, you think you're going to say it better than Christ our Savior, in whom I don't believe?
His earlier work, they were themes of like, the premise of Pi, for anyone that knows or just doesn't know, is this mathematician is trying to find the remaining number to unlock, the reason of the world, the reason of the universe, essentially.
Well, he thinks there's a pattern,
right?
The way Fibonacci's numbers and the golden ratio and stuff like that, the way those patterns keep repeating in nature, he thinks there's a pattern to the stock market. But it turns out he's looking for a pattern that other people are looking for. People want to exploit the stock market, but also like these Hasidic Jews are looking for, they think it's the answer that'll let them understand God. Like everybody's after this same concept
for their own selfish reasons. And
exactly.
And so juxtapose that with Mother, which is just literally on rails.
We are all living on this one planet with one mother who gave us life, and how do we treat her?
Oh. And that's the good and the bad, because I like it more when he's freelancing a little bit and he's adding a little bit to it, and even darkening it up sometimes. Like he said, you have to show the darkness to really appreciate the light. But literally, when you're just forced, no matter how perfectly acted Mother is, how perfect the sound design is, how perfect the set design is, everything in that movie lines up beautifully. Like it crescendos, it ticks up in all this stuff. It's done so well. But it's so stupid. You're literally sitting there watching, like, oh, it's the Bible in order. It's like, yeah, we get it.
Yeah.
And same thing with the fountain, where he's just like, that's the closest to showing my real, like, religious beliefs is in the fountain. It's like, yeah, cool, that's all well and good. But why did we have to sit through your sermon?
Believing in crystals is a waste of an atheist. There aren't enough of us. There aren't enough good atheists out there. We can't have them believing in, I don't know, whatever the fountain was.
Right, yeah.
He's Brooklyn's answer to Kevin Smith. If you give him $6 million, he'll make The Wrestler. And if you give him $300 million, he'll make fucking Noah. Who cares? Like, don't give Darren Aronofsky more than $5 million.
And that's the
Give
answer.
him one camera.
Yeah.
Give him an actor nobody wants to work with and set him loose. Make him cast Sean Gillette again.
Yeah.
They made 2 good movies together.
Put him with Shia LaBeouf. Nah, I think that's even too late now.
It's too late, man. Shia LaBeouf had a really good 2019.
Yeah, no shit. Yeah, it's just disappointing. Like, because I think that his stripped down movies, like you said, are just great. Like that he shot The Wrestler on really shitty film grade because of the budget, but it turned out to be part of
look like a documentary.
Yeah, exactly. And what a brilliant choice. Like, he makes these fucking phenomenal choices. Like, perfect acting. The Wrestler, I think, pound for pound, is probably his best film.
Yeah.
I
think Requiem's a little overrated.
It's hard, man, right?
But it's not like but I'm so sick of, like, on Reddit, everyone's like, what's the most disturbing film you've seen? It's Requiem for a Dream. Oh yeah, a guy injects drugs and then there's a dildo scene.
Yeah.
Definitely more disturbing than Irreversible.
Sounds like a Saturday. Yeah.
Right? Or a Serbian film, or like there's some legit disturbing, like, if the Requiem for a Dream is the most disturbing thing you've ever seen, congrats on your 5 DVD collection. And, like, congrats on never, like, being truly horrified at seeing something very affecting on screen, because, like, I've seen some shit.
Yeah. The Wrestler is way more affecting and disturbing than Requiem, in my opinion.
Because it's not supernatural. Requiem is sort of like, oh, all right, yeah, sometimes people get their arms cut off, whatever, but, like, that's sort of out there. But the Wrestler, it's like, yeah, he just went and saw people. Like, Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson never took a staple gun to somebody because he makes enough money doing it not to. But for every Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, there's 250 guys with no health insurance hitting each other with, like, big light bulb tubes and stapling each other, wrapping barbed wire around each other's necks for like $50.
Right.
And if they get hurt, they have no insurance.
Or free, because they crave, because that's the only time that someone's going to root for them in life.
Huh?
And that's what's heartbreaking. And just the arc, or the lack thereof, of the Ram, like, towards the end, he literally has spent his entire life being selfish, ruining other people's lives just to get that kind of high. And then in the end, when he has the second chance, he ruins their lives again. And it's just like, that's fucked. Like, that is so emotionally coring of a plot, and it's executed beautifully. It's just a perfect film, in my opinion. And then the same person made Black Swan, and they basically made The Wrestler again, but with ballet. And I'm like, why are you doing this?
Because Black Swan was really good.
Yeah,
All his best
I'm not
movies
saying
are
it's
about
not.
obsession.
Yeah.
They're his best movies are about people who are obsessed. His worst movies are about the Bible. You know,
Sure.
like Pi, as somebody that's obsessed with finding a pattern till like it destroys him. Requiem, it's people who are obsessed with their dream to like clean up and get off the street and buy their girlfriend a dress shop, and that destroys them. You know, The Fountain's about a guy who's obsessed with finding the cure for his wife, and like everything else suffers. The Wrestler, a guy who's obsessed with being the wrestler, to the rest of his life suffers, and he's like, they're like, your heart can't handle this. He's like, whatever, I'll do it.
Yeah.
Black Swan, somebody who's so obsessed with being the Black Swan, she loses her mind. And then after that, it's sort of like, yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's just hack films.
It's not hack, but he made Noah twice. I don't like that.
Right. But I mean, it's so sad because Noah and Mother phenomenally made films. They look
really good. Yeah. He knows how to direct a movie very well.
Yes.
And he knows how to make a movie for $6 million because he doesn't have the film stock he wants or whatever. But like, if you give him an unlimited budget, he's like, all right, I will do everything I need to. He could do anything. He could make a $5,000 iPhone movie, and he could make a $500 million epic.
Mm-hmm.
He can do it all. He's very good.
But I think can't get out of his own way.
He thrives when he does the writing, and his current obsession with doing religious allegory is sort of boring to me.
Yeah.
I like his, like, this person is obsessed and it destroyed their life. I think that's... His early stuff was very realistic. And realistic to the point where showing things that disturb people, but it's like, these are the consequences of your obsession.
Mm-hmm.
And I think thematically, when because he's aware of this. If you hear him in interviews, he talks about how he likes to write about people that are obsessed. So he knows that. I think that's his wheelhouse. I hope his next movie gets back to that.
I mean, I hope he got it out of his system, because there's also this little thing in him where, he's just like, they're like, oh, Mother was so shocking, and it's just so, people were passing out in the theaters and blah, blah, blah. Again, it's just like, oh God, you've lived a charmed life if you're that like disturbed by Mother. It's really...
I don't want to sound like we're bragging like, dude, we love hardcore shit, but like at the same time...
Yeah. It's just like, okay, the baby's neck cracks. It's disturbing, sure. But the reason that he is doing that, of course, that's how he was telling the story of a story. But he's just like, everyone's on their iPhone now. I have to make movies that kind of ramp up to force you to pay attention to what's on the screen. And that's a good idea. But I think even the rest of the stuff in that film would do that anyways. It's like, his films are so frenetic that you have to pay attention to every scene and everything. You have to be on board, or you're going to miss something.
Mother was very deliberately quiet. There was no soundtrack to Mother. There was, there was the sound design, but there was no film soundtrack. There were like no songs, which is unusual for him, because starting out, a lot of house music, like good soundtracks on his first couple of movies. And then, I think Mother was made the way it needed to be made to tell the story. It told the way it told it, for sure.
And it's not like it wasn't obvious enough, but then he's that filmmaker that will be that. Yeah, it's about this, and he'll like explain it all for everyone, 90% of it, and then someone asks like, oh well, what's the orange drink in the medicine cabinet? He's like, I can't tell you that. That's a total secret. It's like, what?
I got to leave some things up to be interpreted by the yeah.
It's like this one throwaway thing that doesn't matter. You just explain your entire film. Like
the yellow drink is killing all the humans.
Oh sure.
So it's COVID.
Wow, he knew what he was doing this whole time. One thing,
we're the virus, John.
He referred to his filmmaking as punk, and that put a lot of into perspectives for me. Because, you know, obviously...
Anybody who thinks they're a punk isn't, so yeah, that sounds about right.
Well, it's not like he's talking about the music genre. I think that he's just... Punk, like, early punk is just...
Anti-establishment.
Yeah, it's a super brash, it's in your face, and sometimes it's ham-fisted. They're literally just, like, playing 3 chords and telling you what they're singing about, but it forces you to pay attention, right? And that put his films into perspective for me a little bit more. You know, even from Pie all the way to Mother. And I think that's the arc that he's going for is, you know, he told his father before he made his first film, you know, he's like, Dad, I want either cheers or booze. I just want a reaction.
I guess, like, I don't know, man. You either die the Sex Pistols or you live long enough to see yourself become Public Image Ltd., right? So, like...
Yeah,
I think now we're into the this is what you want, this is what you get phase of his career, and
yeah.
I don't know, man. I liked his early stuff better.
I think it's very telling that his influences were Hitchcock and Scorsese, but you know he also was coming up in that, you know, early '90s where he cited like Linkletter. Hacker was like a major like aha moment for him. He's like, oh, you know, these are how independent.
Did you say hacker or slacker?
I meant slacker.
We're gonna slack the Gibson.
You know, he said Tarantino, Jarmusch, Rodriguez, even, you know, all your favorite 90 who's...
Well, yeah, Rodriguez is actually, I think, a better parallel than some people might think, because I didn't realize how little money he made El Mariachi for.
Mm-hmm. His best movie.
Yeah. I mean, Desperado was cool as hell, but yeah. El Mariachi may have been oh man, yeah. It was his Clerks, right?
Yeah, or his Pie, right.
Yeah. Like Clerks 2, not as good. More money, not as good.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's funny. I never thought to compare him to Robert Rodriguez, but as soon as he said that was one of his contemporaries who was like starting out when he started out, I'm like, oh man. And you know, Robert Rodriguez is another guy that's sort of like, you look at all of his films in the context of like how his partnership with Quentin Tarantino's gone down, and it's, you know, you can kind of see parallels between someone like Linkletter and Aronofsky, even though they didn't like per se work together.
Right.
I think that's an interesting comparison.
There's a huge amount of Linkletter, I think, in some of his, you know, Linkletter has such a diverse filmography, and you know, from
yeah.
But those kind of like overlong kind of stargazing conversations sometimes, you know, usually in an Aronofsky film, they're you know, their faces packed with heroin, so that's why they're having these kind of moments. But you could see those. He feels like a 90s filmmaker for sure, or at least, you know, came from that school. It's funny because he talks like in interviews, he talks like he's in a Tarantino film, but his dialogue's always a little bit more cleaned up.
It's like his characters speak in allegory.
Yeah, okay.
Tarantino's like, yeah, my characters are criminals and they talk like I imagine criminals would.
Right.
But it seems like Aronofsky characters speak in allegory.
Yeah, Tarantino criminals feel a little bit more movie criminally. And Aronofsky, they come off a little bit more organically.
Well, Tarantino's a throwback director.
Right.
You can tell how heavily influenced he was by all the movies he grew up watching in the 70s. His whole aesthetic is like, 70s. So you could see that. I don't think that Aronofsky was as influenced by cinema as Tarantino was. I think he was more influenced by television. He describes himself as coming from the Sesame Street generation. So I think he watched a lot of TV growing up. On Coney Island, what else is there to do but go ride the cyclone, I guess, and be one of the 8 people who's died? I don't know, like Coney Island. It's how bizarre would it be to grow up that near Coney Island, right?
Right.
It's just such a weird place. It's a character in so many movies just because it's sort of like, well, it's a dump, but it's our dump. Like no one's ever like portrayed Coney Island as like looking good. It's just sort of like, well, here's where junkies go to do heroin and people go on a first date. They get an overpriced corn dog, and then a bunch of teenagers in matching vests pull a knife on them.
He features it in 3 films, right? It's in The Wrestler, it's in Requiem, and in Pi. You can't talk about, or correctly, you can't talk about his films without his visual styles, because that's, some people have their stuff. Like Wes Anderson has his knolling, everything super symmetrical, kind of Kubrick-esque, but man, it's just close-ups all the time, which we talked about. But also, his use of lighting is pretty interesting, because he lets that kind of tell the story too. Usually when one of the Aronofsky films are spiking or are, climaxing, you're going to get some kind of a frenetic light or a strobe to show some sort of, like this isn't okay, or this is the boiling point. This is where the water is boiling over the pot. So
yeah, you get primed by the lighting a lot. Another thing he likes to do is, like, when things are really frenetic, he mostly did this in Requiem, but I noticed that he mounted the camera too. The actor, he did that to Ellen Burstyn and to Marlon Wayans
and Jennifer Connelly.
Oh yeah, that's true. He did that to. There's a rig where it's like it's this harness that keeps the camera perfectly pointed at your face, so when you tilt, the background tilts because it's pointed straight at you. The camera doesn't move. So, like, if you're running, the background looks real weird. There was a show on MTV where people went to a haunted house where they used that camera rig.
Yeah, Fear.
Yeah, so when I was watching Requiem for the first time, I was like, this is just like that MTV garbage. Like, I just thought it was so dumb he was using that rig. And maybe if I hadn't seen that show,
sure,
I wouldn't have thought that.
Yeah. That's funny.
But he, like, never did that again. But, like, it actually kind of worked in the context of that movie, because every character's climax happened at the same time.
Sure.
Somewhat improbably. Everyone was having the worst day of their life on the same day. So, yeah, that was another thing he did. Like, and it wasn't just that rig, because there was some really shaky stuff he did. Like when Marlon Wayans is, like, in jail, and he's like, "Help my friend, his arm," and he was, like, shaking. I don't know if they did that in post or what, but, like, it was just, everything was real stressful. It came to a nice crescendo where, it was like 10 seconds of that movie was like all of Uncut Gems. In terms of how much light and sound and camera shaking was going on. Sure. So, yeah, he toned that down, but he kind of kept what worked out of that. Mm-hmm. He never, like, shook the camera like it was, someone's baby, but
he refined.
That was a mother reference that you shouldn't shake your baby. You should never shake your baby. That was a reference to the movie Mother. But, like, he doesn't really shake it, but a lot of that priming with light he kept, which I think is cool.
Yeah, like, he was really trying to push the envelope, I think, earlier on with certain effects that were just available to him back then. Like, he said that he doesn't really like going for the huge special effects unless it's like the finale or something, like the actual flood happening in Noah or the whatever happens in the fountain. But there's that one scene where he was, like, really proud of that they achieved back then, because it was kind of a pain in the ass, because they kind of had to do it practically in post, where Ellen Burstyn is in the she's after she's kind of already gone off the deep end, and she's pretty addicted to these pills. She's sitting in the doctor's office, and everyone else is sped up around her, and then, like, her face kind of moves, and you get these tracers on it. They said that that was super hard to do, but they were, like, really proud of that effect, and it looks cool, because I guess they kind of, like, added, like, stills of her face, so, like, as she moved, it, however you make tracers, but that's, I liked that it just seemed like back then he was just more invested in engrossing in, you in the picture, where it's just like, yes, now in Mother, and like I said, everything looks great, but it's just like, you just have to sit in front of Jennifer Lawrence's face for an hour and a half, and it just got taxing after a while.
Mother was just sort of like, well, Jennifer Lawrence is stressed out and yelling at everybody for 2 hours.
People in my house.
Yeah. It's like going to your friend's house and then your friend's mom yells at you and is like, "Are you allowed to yell at me?" But then it's that for 2 hours.
Yeah, I don't know.
And then once you figure out what's going on, you're like, "Oh, we're the house guests."
Right.
Oh, I'm being lectured. I see.
Yeah. That's Adam and Eve. Okay. Oh, we're still doing this? Oh, okay. Cain and Abel. Got it. Oh, there's the... oh, God damn
That was Domhnall Gleeson and his brother, who I guess acts or doesn't act.
Yeah, I didn't know that there was Gleeson bros.
How did Domhnall Gleeson just become just like one of the big... I don't know, man. It just seemed like overnight everyone's like, oh, he's got to be in everything. Definitely just put him in all the movies. I'm not mad at it. It just it's wild, right? Like imagine like being his friend and you're both taking acting classes or whatever, and then it's like he's in everything now. He's in Star Wars, and you're still like doing local theater in Glasgow. It's like, no, it's fine. Yeah, go be in a movie with Michael Fassbender and have your life change. That's fine.
Yeah, and his brother can't get work.
Yeah, and then your brother kills you with a doorknob.
Yeah, I don't know. That was a real bummer. I've never liked a movie so much. Like, it just had all the ingredients, and I'm like, there's no way that this like tasty stew tastes like a fart. Like, I don't get it. But
well, it's a polarizing movie because some people are just like, well, everything that he tried to do worked. But like some people are just like, I didn't like how little my opinion was respected.
Yeah.
Or my intelligence, sort of a deal. You know, it's sort of like once you figured out what's going on, you're like, oh, okay, he's just preaching now. So it was like the end of The Departed where you see the rat on the railing. You're like, oh, you think I'm an idiot. Okay. Interesting. You think I'm the dumbest idiot that you gotta, right. He's a rat. You get it? Like, that's how I felt like for the last hour of Mother.
Yeah.
So like when everyone's talking about how, you know, shocking that movie was, and then somebody called it the worst movie of 2017, you're like, how could a critic say that? But then you like watch it and you're like,
I get it.
It wasn't like Meet the Spartans bad, but at the same time it was just sort of like, I get what you're doing, and like I'm not an idiot, so maybe tone it down.
Yeah, I think I would have liked it better if it was just like shittier made, because it's just like it was so good that it just pissed me off that they were just doing a stupid thing. But like, you know, you think about that.
They did a stupid thing really well.
Yeah, wasted resources and time, and so why didn't we like The Fountain better? It's more ambiguous, but it's just a pile of garbage.
Nobody liked The Fountain. It's not my fault.
I mean, I couldn't hate it. It felt like
there were people out there that like The Fountain is my favorite movie. So like,
it's crazy.
It's got to be for somebody.
I had to watch it again because I was just like, I just?
You know what? You know
who
liked it? Sci-fi people, because like it got nominated for more Saturn Awards than it did Golden Globes, Oscars, and like everything else combined.
Because Hugh Jackman looked like Tilda Swinton? Like, why?
Well, and Clint Mansell's score was fantastic also.
Yeah. That made the budget.
But, like, he was nominated for 3 Saturn Awards. So, like, you figure sci-fi people are like, yes, this is, like, our 2001 question mark? I don't know.
Jesus.
It was a better Cloud Atlas than Cloud Atlas.
I never saw Cloud Atlas.
Well, take my word for it, I guess.
Okay. Yeah, it's just confounding. He's a confounding person because it's just like, I can't say he made a bad, out of the 7, he didn't make a bad film, but there are films in there that I just despise. I don't like Noah. I don't dislike it as much as The Fountain. I don't even dislike it as much as Mother, I don't think, but it's just he's just like, yeah, we're going to tell the story of Noah that you know, but you don't, because we're going to put rock monsters and we're going to put a little bit of brutality in it. And it's just like...
Is that your Brooklyn accent?
I don't know what it is.
That's good. That is good.
Better than my John C. Reilly? It's confounding. I've never been this confused. And this is one that I've wanted to do for years. And I'm like, I need to watch enough film to be able to really dissect these properly. Because if I would have done this 2 years ago, if we would have done this episode before, I would have just been like, Requiem's the shit and it's the best thing of all time. And, I don't care if I'm basic. But now I'm like, is it? It is. Like, I still think it's an A movie. It's an A minus movie. Especially for...
No, it's fine. I'm sick of how, like, everyone talks about movies, talks about like it was more impactful than it was. It was just fine.
But is it losing points for you because of the whole Fight Club 7 stigma, where it's the people around it make it shittier?
Maybe a little.
Sure.
But, like, I just watched it today and I was like, this holds up.
Yeah.
So, like, I don't want to talk to anybody who wants to talk about Requiem, but I still like watching it. Does that make sense?
You don't want to go to bat for it, but
it's like Rick and Morty. I used to be like, I was like, dude, you got to watch Rick and Morty. It's really funny. But then, like, I don't say that to people anymore because I don't want anyone to agree with me and then want to talk to me about Rick and Morty.
Right.
And I don't want to talk to anybody who hasn't seen Rick and Morty because I'm just going to sound like the people I don't want to talk to about Rick and Morty. Right. So I just shut up about it.
Yeah.
And Requiem's like that. I don't want to talk to you about Requiem for a Dream. I don't want to hear about how that ass-to-ass scene was like the most disturbing thing you've seen on film because...
Oh, Jesus. Yeah.
It's just that
watch Fox News for 5 minutes and tell me that the ass-to-ass scene is the worst thing you've ever seen, or whatever. Like, just get out more.
I want him to make more movies like The Wrestler.
Yes.
Even if he made more movies like Black Swan, that'd be fine. Just like stop trying to do the pretentious allegory shit, or keep doing it. I'm not your boss. Like, if you're gonna have more success getting $150 million to make Noah and then just ripping off $350 million at the box office, like, what do I know? A studio who wants to make $200 million is just gonna be like, yeah, here you go, do what you want. So, like, I guess I don't know what I'm talking about, but like, he says make the kind of movie you want to see, and I do you really think that he wanted to see Noah? Is that the kind of shit he wanted to see? The same guy who made Pi and Requiem and The Wrestler, is Noah really what he wanted to see? And if that is great, then if that's where he's headed, it doesn't diminish his first 5 movies for me.
That's fair.
4 of which I really liked. And it's entirely possible I don't like The Fountain because I don't understand it. It's probably not true, but it's entirely possible.
Yeah. Even if it is that we don't get it, it's so stupid that I don't want to get it.
I didn't get Cloud Atlas.
I
don't want to get Cloud Atlas. We'll do a Wachowski episode of this.
There we go.
We made 3 good movies.
The Matrix
Reloaded and Speed Racer.
How dare you?
Did you like Jupiter Ascending?
Oh God, I forgot they did that too. It's like Alex Proyas. You make The Crow and Dark City, and then you go on and make Gods of Egypt or whatever. Jesus. Yeah. He's not quite there, but I mean, look, that might be.
Dark City was the most underrated movie of all time. Because it came out like the same week as The Matrix, and it was like, no one gives a shit.
Right. Oh, that movie's perfect.
No, it's got Kiefer Sutherland in it, and he's like, what if my character was out of breath? And like, what? He's like, yeah, he's out of breath all the time because he's a scientist. And they're like, all right, man, you do you, Kiefer. We realize that you're really big right now because of 24, and it's a pleasure to have you here. So if you want to be, yeah, he's out of breath. All right, great, go for it.
Can you put a cleft on my eye? Why? I don't. You know what? He and I share a birthday, so he's my birthday twin.
Okay.
So
I won't say any. Him and who?
Donald Sutherland and Jonah Hill. He and I were born on the same day, on the same year, in the same hospital.
You did it.
If they just would have mixed up the cribs. Going back real quick to what you said about you want to see more movies like The Wrestler, because I think he made Black Swan. Black Swan feels like a sequel to The Wrestler to me. Just
kinda, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, and And it's not, I think Black Swan's great, but I didn't like it as much. And I just felt like it was too soon. Like, he just gets stuck in these things. And it's just like, I want to see a little bit more. Linklater, he's not, right? Like, Linklater, you could get a before series movie where it's just two people talking and fighting and it's a romance, and then it goes into, a Scanner Darkly or something, and it's just something completely different. And Aronofsky just feels like, you have like it's like in Twins, or it's like in Twos. It's like, okay, we're going to do Requiem that feel pretty the same, and then we're going to do Wrestler and Black Swan, and then, and then of course Noah and Mother. So if this is, testing my thesis going forward, we're out of this, and now we're going to get something new, but...
Linklater also made Everybody Wants Some.
Right.
Which you liked.
I did.
For some reason.
I really did.
But like, even Linklater's got an Everybody Wants Some in his filmography.
Yeah.
Which was his Fountain? I don't know.
Oh no, I didn't like that movie.
You said you did.
Stop it.
Bring up the tape.
We'll roll the tape.
Roll the tape on the Linklater episode.
You damn liar. I didn't like that movie. Maybe I did. I don't remember. I mean, they were hunky.
I think you did.
They were some tight.
I'm going to go watch the Linklater episode tonight. And everyone should watch this and all of our past episodes. By clicking on this channel, you can go through all our past episodes and disagree with us. Write us new comments about how wrong we are. We don't care. Thumbs down the video. It still counts as an interaction.
Boo. That's right. Yeah, so this is what I've been waiting 2 years of my life, or like 20 years of my life for. I'm just as confused as actually, I'm not as confused. Well, I'm more confused now, rather. See, he's in my head.
You sound confused.
I was, totally on board. Fincher and Aronofsky were just 1 and 2 for, a good 15 years of my life. And now I don't know if they're there anymore, man. I don't even know if they're in the top 10.
Hey, man, directors. I used to think I liked Nicholas Winding Refn. We all suffer from the more you dig into it, the less you're glad you found.
He got us all, man.
Oof. And that's what we do on this podcast. Sometimes we meet our heroes and we wish we didn't. But
yeah.
I still think Aronofsky is a great director, and maybe he's still a good writer. So I don't know.
Yeah.
He's not making movies for me. He's making movies for him, and I'm not always going to be on board. But like, I'm glad he's not compromising. He would rather make a film be more of a pain in his ass to make, like The Wrestler was, than He could have got $25 million or $50 million to make The Wrestler if he'd just not done it with Mickey Rourke, and he wouldn't. Like, you gotta admire that about a filmmaker. He just didn't want to make the kind of movie it would have been without Mickey Rourke.
Yeah.
That was his guy. He liked Angel Heart.
But I mean, what a choice, though, right? Like, who else could have played it? He was right.
Somebody else could have played it. Like, absolutely. Somebody else could have done it.
I'm thinking on who. I'm really Jim Carrey.
With Dave
like,
Bautista or something.
Who the fuck? Yeah. Who was gonna be Randy the Ram?
Kumail Nanjiani's ripped now. It could have been him. I don't know. Like all I'm saying is, like, good for him for sticking to his guns. Because like, mate, what if you are right though? What if nobody else could have done it?
Right. I know that you have your actors thing, but the performances in these films, you have to say these people are completely running their soul to the bone, right?
I think he's a good writer. And I think writing is the most important part. I think it's sad that most people couldn't name 10 Hollywood writers, but they, could name the entire cast of Friends.
Sure.
Yeah. But do you know who wrote your favorite movie? If it wasn't the director, you probably don't. Like, writing is the hardest part, and they get paid the least.
Yeah.
So that part sucks. Not everybody can be Chris Pratt and just like, "Oh, I'm Chris Pratt. This is how I look all the time." They're like, genius.
Yeah.
Give that man $1 billion a year to just be dumpy in front of a camera.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
And then the genius who wrote Jurassic Park, the Return to Jurassic Park, where they have the dinosaurs attacking them, and then a bigger dinosaur comes and attacks those dinosaurs, and then you're like, we're saved. And then another even bigger dinosaur attacks that. Genius.
It's like the Russian shell game.
That's a double Deus Rex Machina. Chris Pratt couldn't have thought of that. It had to be a genius writer. And I think good writing is more important than good acting.
Okay, so you're saying that I know what you're saying, and I agree. Like, especially in his films, he leaves very little room for error, but I think that if you want to see actors just like, he made Marlon Wayans look like he knew how to do things. Like, and that's...
Is Marlon Wayans a good actor, or did he write
No, that's what I'm saying. Marlon Wayans is fucking Marlon Wayans. Like, who cares? But he put in the performance of his life.
He put in the exact same performance in the Dungeons and Dragons movie. I just watch Dungeons and Dragons. You're like, oh shit, this is just the same thing.
This is never ending. All right, fine. It's our Aronofsky episode. Follow us on...
I know you saw the Dungeons and Dragons movie, John.
I know. You know I know. Or you know I did. God, these hazy...
That cast was crazy. The cast of is like, let's get Thora Birch at the height of her career. She just made American Beauty. Let's get Jeremy Irons and let's get Marlon Wayans right after he made Requiem for a Dream. Oh boy, Dungeons and Dragons. They could have easily made a good movie, but they opted not to, and that is a ballsy choice. That's a ballsier choice than sticking to your guns and working with Mickey Rourke. It's like, let's waste Jeremy Irons. Scar, Simon Gruber, whatever his Domador.
Sure.
I don't remember that.
I don't know.
Was it Domador? Something like that.
Is that a Die Hard reference? Because you know how I don't know.
You never saw Die Hard with a Vengeance?
I never saw a Die Hard film.
No, what?
This is what I'm famous for.
Wow, what?
Serious.
That's every Christmas. What do you watch on Christmas Eve?
Schindler's List.
Yikes.
If you want to argue with us, do so in the comments down below. Click the thumbs up or down button downstairs. You could talk to us on our Twitter page at film_hooligans. You could listen to this in podcast form only, and a lot of you do. More people do than watch the video version, which is fine. But if you are doing that, leave us all the comments, or not comments, but the apples, oranges, whatever, hearts. Share it around. That's the best way to, freely support the stuff that you like listening to or like watching. Spreaker or Spotify, iTunes, all that good stuff. So, or you could just talk to me on my normal whatever Twitter at @OrsI'veDone. Jason Euclid Alt. Where can everyone find you?
I am at Jason E. Alt on the Twitter, and I have a pinned post at the top of my profile that talks about all the other projects I do around the web, just in case you're interested in any of that.
Perfect. All right. Yeah. We'll insert some dramatic music and imagery right here, but it'll probably just be a picture of a squirrel. Good night, everyone.